The following program contains coarse language and mature subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
Live from the prairie plains of Canada, direct from Winnipeg, Manitoba, around the globe and across all 24 time zones, at blazing speeds on the internet, it's time for the R-rated podcast talk show that promises straight talk and no bullshit. It's Night Talk with your host, Dr. Talk. No topic too taboo, nothing's too risque. He takes it all on for your entertainment. So settle in, turn it up, and tune in for Night Talk with Dr. Talk.
All right, gang, we are live. Welcome once again to another edition of Night Talk with Dr. Talk. That's me. And of course, as promised this week, the legendary man himself, lead vocalist of Prism, solo artist, lead guitarist. Please welcome Al Harlow. Al, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me along today, Jeff.
Glad to have you. How you doing?
Well, really well. Greetings from the left coast of Canada.
Well, greetings from the windy city of Winnipeg.
Yes, indeed. You're right in the middle of it there, friend.
Yes. So, before we get into all things Prism and everything else, you have a little bit of an announcement to make. You have a new solo album.
Well, thank you for asking. Yes, it was a bit of a long time coming, but I'd always been a solo guy anyway, even before and during Prism. So yeah, we finally got this thing out. So I'll shamelessly show it here. I hope there's not too much glare, but is that going to work with the camera?
Yep, we can see it just fine.
Yeah, that's got the limited edition colored vinyl gold seal on a numbered collector's item there. That's the colored vinyl, and of course, I'm told now that CDs are coming back into vogue. So who knows? Maybe the 12-year-olds are onto something brand new called the CD. So yeah, it's everywhere. It's on Spotify and
I still
iTunes.
collect CDs.
Yeah, why not? I mean, it's a wonderful format, and it sounds live.
So tell us about the new album.
Well, thank you again for asking. Yeah, I've been considering. We're still considering a new Prism record, but you just can't kind of put out that fire that burns in your heart, and so it's autobiographical in the sense that isn't it something the album art, the art form of making an album that flows from beginning to end. So it is kind of a couched autobiography, but you'd have to call it brand new classic rock or, guitar-driven melodic rock.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just kind of, we all got our way of speaking and our way of expressing it, So it's brand new rock and roll.
Have you incorporated synths into it?
Are there synths on the record, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's some sort of brass-oriented synth stuff going on in there. And we have a real strings, too, like real string players. There's a string quartet on one of the ballads. And my friend James Bowers did a beautiful synthesized French horn, a sampled French horn. And so, yeah, but I wouldn't call it a synthy record. You know what I mean? It's more textural, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. That's one thing I always thought was so cool about Prism. You had these psychedelic, groovy synthesizer intros into the songs, and then bam, the band just kicks in. And then peppered throughout the song, you got the synth samplings going on. and then you'd hear a horn section. Just great stuff.
Well, thanks. We all grew up on rhythm and blues, the Motown sound, Stax Volt, and of course we couldn't dispel the fact that we were of the Beatles and Stones children, and
Hmm.
and Bob Dylan. He always had a lot of Hammond organ type, that folk blues thing going on, and so I mean that was just the stuff that was going through my head when I was a kid, and we just incorporated that, and it just made sense to us. But yeah, guitar driven uh, rock that has keyboards, as part of the window dressing.
Hmm. Now, Al, take us back to the the birth of, if you will, of Prism. Were you there from day one?
Well, there are two biographies on that, because a lot of the fans will look at the first album and you don't see me there, and then I suddenly appear on the second album. So there's this kind of rumor that I parachuted in.
Hmm.
But before we were called Prism, we were called the Seeds of Time. So
Oh.
we were a band beforehand, and we all lived together in the same house, and got into trouble and mischief together. And so I was a full-fledged member of the Seeds of Time, and then there was a little 5-minute break where I was actually down the street recording my first solo album at the very moment that the guys were in with this new singer named Ron Tabak, and they were recording the tracks that became the first Prism record. And so I was right in just outside the picture frame for the first 5 minutes, and then it had to become a band. You know what I mean? Like there was some studio tracks, and so everybody, kind of blew the whistle and said, "Okay, let's put the Seeds of Time together around this thing."
Hmm.
So we're talking in a matter of months, really. And so I just jumped back into the loop, and away we went with the "See Forever Eyes" album, which was the second album. So 6 months later.
Now, was it the first Prism album or the second Prism album that went platinum?
Well, they all went platinum, but the first one was just called Prism, and the cover had a hand with a mirror and some, rainbow colors flying off of it. And then the second album was See Forever Eyes, and then Armageddon and Young and Restless, and on and on. Yeah.
See Forever Eyes, I love that album.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Now at that time, we actually toured with we had horn, as you mentioned, we had rhythm and blues horns,
Hmm.
a horn section, and we actually traveled around North America with a horn section.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were the days, huh?
Wow. Um, Now you mentioned Ron Tabak,
Hmm.
who was the original lead vocalist of Prism.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, he passed in 1984,
That's right.
and that must have been extremely devastating for you guys and the band. Um, how in the world did you cope?
Well, yeah, I mean, as a friend and a brother, first of all, and we were absolutely, we had taken a Christmas break, and we were in a state of reuniting. We hadn't been together for a couple of years, or a year and a half, or whatever it was. And so, yeah, we had decided in the autumn of '84, okay, this is it. The Five Musketeers, here we go again. And yes, tragically, during that Christmas hiatus, we were going to start January the 1st, and we lost Ron in a traffic accident right at that moment. So, yeah, I mean, first of all, personally and professionally, yeah, we were devastated, and that's it. We just hung up our spurs for another 4 years, actually. Yeah.
And okay, so that was 1984. You didn't take over lead vocals until 2002. So who filled his shoes between then and 2002?
Yes. Well, we had a great singer named Henry Small for 2 albums, Small Change, and then, well, Beat Street was kind of the end of that era. And then a fellow named Darcy Deutsch came in, and and sang with us mainly live. And we made one album with him in '92, I guess it was. And then he was with us for the interim for that period. Yeah. And then I'd always been the high harmony guy. And so my way of looking at it is that when Darcy left, I'd always been singing the choruses, and all of a sudden I had to sing the verses also.
Mm-hmm. Before we went to air, I asked you about the live album.
Yeah.
Which came out in what year again?
Well, we did it live. It's called Live in Detroit, or Tonight in Detroit. What is our live album called? And it was funny because so that was done live in Detroit in 1978. Yikes, might as well be 1878.
Yeah.
And we were that was our first tour. It was like our third or fourth show, period, ever as Prism. Oh, yeah. So we felt that it was a bit premature. You know what I mean? Like, we would rather have been really pounding it around the US for a year and then, put a microphone in front of it and hit the record button. So we found that we thought it was a bit early in our tightness and development as a band. But in those days, there was a lot of live rock music on American radio. So it was recorded. We were on Areola Records, I think, at that time. But it was recorded for the U.S. All-Star Radio Network or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there were actually little announcements, welcome, tonight, Prism. And that was the album,
Mm-hmm.
And so it went out all across America as a live show. And then I think the next week it came out as a live album on blue vinyl.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. So now it's been bootlegged a few times, and heaven knows it's probably out online somewhere right now. But we still plan to reissue it in the original packaging. Had a nice cover on it and that kind of stuff. So yes, give me a minute. I'm going to write that down. Re-release the live album
on CD.
Or sure, yeah, and vinyl maybe. We'll do blue vinyl again.
Sure.
And
I'm a huge fan of live albums, by the way.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's so honest, and there's an energy there that you cannot get in the studio. You know what I mean? And plus, you've just got the crowd just supplying so much energy. So yeah, I mean, even now, the way we tour now, we really want to capture, a brand new live album too. So I'm writing that down too.
Was there ever a video? Video concert of Prism?
Well, a few of our shows have been done video wise. Like there was the Canada Jam series, and that was like a television broadcast that it was given to us as well. Now somewhere we still have that. And then there's been a couple of things like during the pandemic, actually, the modern edition of the band, we did a worldwide simulcast. And now that was done in Vancouver at the Commodore Ballroom, but it was during the blackout of the pandemic. So the ballroom was empty. So it holds 1,000 people, and it was just us in there on an afternoon, with the camera crew. And so that's just like a year and a half ago. So, we really do have to package all this stuff and get it out there again. So yeah, there's a couple of live shows that are very well recorded audio wise and good video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's our duty to get that out there.
And so this is something you plan to release.
Yes, I've got to get out of this chair and push the buttons and get this thing available. Yeah.
Who holds the publishing for Prism?
For all of the
catalog, yeah.
All the songs that we know so well.
Yeah.
That was Capital EMI, and they're now owned by Universal Music. What isn't, Universal owns Universally. And so it's actually Sony actually owns the publishing arm of all our stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And so like we're partners in that, we'd have to notify, I think is the legal term. Notification.
Yeah. It had crossed my mind leading up to the podcast that after the intro that I have to the show plays, when you watch this back, I was going to search for a clip of some kind on YouTube of you guys playing live, maybe just play a 30-second clip, and then I figured maybe not, because I'm going to get hit with a copyright claim from YouTube.
Ooh, we're always looking out for that, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a couple of decent ones, the CBC, we did several shows with them, and one was the Rays show. We did Armageddon and Young and Restless and a couple of other things, and that's out there on YouTube, and the quality is quite commendable, So yeah, there's a few, and of course these days there's iPhone videos of everybody every 5 minutes, So there's your life, pal. This is your life on video, which means that you have to buy new clothes every year.
Yeah.
Stage clothes.
So what's next for Al Harlow?
Well, let's see. Our tour is really building up this year. My agent tells me that we're doing just fine. So yeah, we'll be crossing Canada several times. Halifax to Victoria, the whole width of it, and Winnipeg too. My goodness! So on June the 3rd, we're right downtown doing that great outdoor event that you folks do every year, and then the White Beach Festival during the summer.
Okay.
And then at the Regent Casino Theater on November the 3rd. So yeah, kind of bookends. We'll be passing through the area anyway 3 times this year. So yeah, we're looking forward to seeing all our friends.
That's just down the street from me.
Yeah. Well, we hope to see you there, Jeff.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Come on along. We'll go backstage and we'll eat the deli tray.
Right. Hey, I'm a drummer too, by the way.
Well, come on, sit in, man. Do you know Spaceship Superstar? Let's go.
Of course. How close are you now with your current lineup of Prism? How tight of a unit are you guys?
That's a good question. It's often been said, you can throw together a group of good musicians, and that doesn't make them a band. You know what I mean? Like, a band is a brotherhood. There's something telepathic when you've really got a tight band. And I think when Ronnie Wood was joining the Stones, he said, sure, there's lots of guitar players out there who could cut the gig, but we're brothers, like we can live together. Like I can, with all the guys in Prism, we can give each other one look on stage and we know exactly what we're saying. We're speaking an ear and an eye language to each other. And you really have to love each other's playing, so we can move in a direction, we can change it up in the twinkling of an eye. And we're teasing each other throughout the night too. You know what I mean? Like if Tad, the bassist, or Gary Grace, the drummer, if they just give me a little bit of a goosing, I'll look around and I'll give a wink and say, okay, I caught that. And I might answer it. I might give them a quick little, here's back at you on the guitar, So there's that wonderful, I don't want to call it support, but we let each other know that we're listening to each other and we love each other's playing,
Yeah.
So after you get off stage, it's like hugs as opposed to, hey man, you made a mistake. It's none of that,
Yeah.
And so all 4 of us, Mark Gladstone on keyboards, I mean, we just feed off each other. So those guys inspire me like every night. And I'm told that that's mutual. So, it's a brotherhood. And then of course there's the traveling and the airports and the hotels, and, you got to be rough and ready. You got to come out smiling, So everyone's really they're solid guys. You know, they're just unflappable, and you know, we love doing it, and we love doing it together.
What's the guys that are touring with you? Are they all younger guys?
Well, everyone's younger than me now.
Oh, come on now.
Don't you know? I'm Father Christmas. I just got rid of the beard.
That's right.
Well, this band has been together over 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's funny because there have been times, and there have been times when the original band or variations. When we've had some great guys in this band over the decades, but we've taken a bit of time off and come back, not to the point where we're coming out of retirement. I can't even spell the word retirement, So, I think every band will, take a few months break and so forth and come back and regroup. But yeah, this lineup has been together for over 20 years. I can't believe I'm saying that. But over the time, I mean, Jim Valance and Bryan Adams drummed on much of the first album. Rocket came in, I came in, and again, all within a 5-minute period. John Hall, our original keyboard player from the Seeds of Time, and Lindsay Mitchell. And then over the years, we've had some wonderful guest players. Johnny Ferreira of Colin James Band, and Daryl Mays was drumming with us for a while. John Cody, speaking of Lee Aaron's band,
Yeah.
and husband of Lee, John Cody drummed with us for, my goodness, a couple of years, I think. So yeah, we've had some wonderful people on board. I've just loved the ride. I don't think there's been anybody who's been associated with the Prism team that I haven't admired and really enjoyed working with. It's just been a wonderful ride, and it continues.
Now, Lee told me to ask you, because I had her on the show last week. I think you might know where this is going.
Uh-oh, surprise me. I don't know. No, I don't.
Oh, okay. She said you're going to love talking to Al because Al's got some great road stories.
Oh, no, I've led a very sheltered life, I just come down from the hill and say goodbye to the monks, and I just behave myself.
Yes. Dish, Al, dish.
Well, I guess we all have stories. Yes. Well, the book is coming out next year. So, yeah. You know what they say? It'll all be in the book.
Yeah. Lee's writing a book too.
Are you?
No, Lee.
Oh, she is. Well,
yes.
Yeah, we're having a contest. Yeah, how far are you in your book? I don't know. How far are you? So I have to edit mine down. I've got too much. It has to be whittled down. And it's not a tell-all book. It's just the adventures of, And yeah, we've toured with Lee Aaron, and these days the word tour has a small T on tour. Like 3 gigs in a row, that's a tour,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in the 90s, my goodness, we were on the road for a while with Lee Aaron, and we still get together and we're doing some stuff together this year, in fact. So yeah, and I know she has a wonderful story to tell as well. It's been a wonderful ride for her, and unbelievable. I mean, she just puts out album after album. And talk about live Blu-rays and DVDs and documentaries and stuff. It's unbelievable. I mean, she's as fresh now as an artist as she was right back at the beginning and all the way through. She never stopped.
I was so hoping when I was talking to her that because I doing research prior to the interview, I was so hoping that she had a copy of her live DVD.
Right.
It's out of print.
Well, I've got one here for you, Jeff.
We'll
get her permission. We'll run off a copy for you.
Oh, super. That would be great. I love live concerts.
Yeah, I'm a fan. Sure. Why not?
Yeah. No, she told me that they were out of print, and I was out of luck. So.
Oh, maybe it'll come out next year as a hologram.
Yeah. So, getting back to Prism, back to the earlier years, I guess we should go back to. Um, is there a particular place, whether it be North America, Japan, Europe, that you just thoroughly were blown away with the response from the crowd?
Whoa. Well, I would have to say there were some mind-blowing shows, well, mind-blowing to me anyway. Yeah, there have been some landmark shows, some that stick out more than others. And they don't have to be the biggest shows, all those certainly register in your memory. I mean, we played to 100,000 people in Central Park in New York City. I remember that.
Wow.
And that Canada Jam show that I mentioned, there was 120 some odd thousand. But Rocket Norton knows all these numbers. I'll ask Rocket.
Mm-hmm.
But there were over 120,000 people at the Canada Jam, which was at the Moseport Raceway in Southern Ontario. And there was us and the Doobie Brothers in Kansas, and that was a big show. But yeah, there's been some other ones that really registered. I remember we played Texas A&E, and there were 18,000 people. And back then, when, say for example, when we did Texas A&E, and we also headlined the Kentucky State Fair, and at that time, the biggest show that had ever been done in rock and roll was the Beatles at Shea Stadium, right? That was the landmark show, until, of course, now there's more people on the planet and the audiences can get bigger, and the industry learned how to do bigger tours and bigger shows, of course. But that was a salient show insofar as the Beatles ran across the playing field to get to the stage, and the aircraft lights followed them, as and the audience went crazy as the Beatles are running across towards the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when Prism headlined the Kentucky State Fair, it was the same thing. Our dressing room was like 100 yards away from where the stage was, and we had to cross a football field to get to the stage. And so the aircraft lights, the spotlights were on us as we're running to the stage. And I remember running across that field and looking at Rocket, and Rocket looked at me, and we had this, yes, this is our moment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this was a moment. So yeah, there's some shows that, I have nothing but affection for. Well, all of it. I'm grateful for all of it. But some shows are more memorable than others. Now, you could ask the other guys and they might tell you a whole different story.
I had asked you earlier about the live album,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a follow-up to it, and I kind of lost it. How many studio albums are there in total?
Whoa, let's see. I think I've counted 8. I should recount. And then there's all those kind of compilations, you know what I mean? And there's 2 greatest hits albums, the Live in Detroit, as you mentioned. And I think if you add them all up, there's at least 10, 12, somewhere in there. Yeah, in the 90s, we did Jericho, Big Black Sky in the 2000s. And yeah, hopefully it keeps going. We're not done yet.
And you did sort of allude to the fact that Prism is interested in doing yet another album soon.
Yes, we must, and because the creativity doesn't stop. We feel right now that we're the best we've ever been. It's kind of like sharpening your tennis game. Like we love doing it, and I think we've sharpened it up to the point where I think we're just better all around. I think you stick with it long enough, and as long as you're healthy and you've still got your wits about you and your muscle tone and your vocal tone, you can keep going.
And where are the plans? At what stage are you right now in terms of the plans for the new Prism album? Is it just conceptual right now?
It's fairly conceptual. Excuse me. I know we've got about, dare I say, 4 or 5 songs that, and pretty much arrangements of 4 or 5 songs. So now we have to check our calendars and say, okay, how many open dates do we have here? Like
Mm-hmm.
let's go in and I would like that to be as live off the floor as could be. I mean, these days everybody can phone it in. You know what I mean? Like send me your files, I'll send you mine, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. But I really want the meat and potatoes to be there. Capture as much of it, with 4 guys in one room as you can. So, yeah, that's the plan.
Who's the main writing force behind the band?
Well, over the years, I mean, once upon a time at the very beginning, you'd have to say that it was Jim Valance and Brian Adams.
Mm-hmm.
Because they met each other when many of us were writing songs for the first couple of Prism records. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so their team was formed during that. So, I mean, Brian had a song. There was a couple of Jim Valance writing by himself. Well, he wrote a lot of the first album. And then Brian had a couple of songs, I think Take It or Leave It and Jealousy was just Brian. You Walked Away Again was a song that it just had Brian's name on it. Lindsay Mitchell was in that original circle, of songwriters. And then from the second album, See Forever Eyes onward, I was right in that cake mix as well. So I wrote Flying, Take Me Away. Lindsay and I wrote Young and Restless together, and I wrote Nickels and Dimes. And I'm losing track here. What else? So we all encouraged each other. You know what I mean? Like if Jim Valance showed up with a song, then we'd say, well, that's great. Let's see. I've got one that would go with that, because we were always thinking conceptually, like what's going to glue together and make album art, So we would listen to each other, and that would spur us on to writing another one.
And what's your process in terms of writing?
You mean words versus melody versus chord changes and all that kind of stuff?
No, I mean right from the very beginning. Do you sit down with a notepad? Do you write music charts? Do you write music notes? Do you write lyrics first? Do you jot notes down and make sense of it later?
Well, I think the answer is it's a song by song by song. Sometimes it could be like title first. You know what I mean? But then you might hear a wonderful set of strong chord changes. You might hear, what is backing up a chorus or a verse, and say, oh man, there's a hook, like a chunky guitar hook or something like that. And I'm not much of a keyboard player, but sometimes I hear a lovely, piano refrain or something like that. So it can come in any direction. Now, not everyone's going to answer that the same way, say like on my new record, I got an email. I was CC'd on an email to somebody else, and they were talking about, I think my agent was talking with a promoter, and somebody else was trying to represent the band or something like this. And the promoter for a show said, my policy is always dance with the one you came with.
Mm-hmm.
That was just his motto. In other words, I'm with you,
Yeah.
You called me first. Okay. So that was the email. But that little line in the middle of an email just hit me. It was just like fireworks on New Year's Eve,
Yeah.
And it took me about 10 minutes to write the song, Dance with the One You Came With. I thought that was a beautiful line,
Ah.
So that was an example of first comes the title and then comes the song,
Yeah.
But I remember with Young and Restless, the music track came first, like that first hook, which was a derivation of my hook from an earlier song called Flying, which was a single in the US. And we were almost paraphrasing ourselves at that point. It was a sort of a similar hook. We had a bit of a theme going there. I think Night to Remember had also a similar hook. If you really listen to it that way, the little melodic theme is very similar in all 3 songs. And then there was a 12-string guitar, kind of a jangly, folky thing going on in Young and Restless. And we took it over to Jim Valence's basement on his little studio, and just cut an instrumental track, And Jim had this beautiful bass line in the chorus, this nice walking bass, real chunky sort of. So there was no song. We were just playing this instrumental, and then we had to figure out what to call it. So I think it had about 2 or 3 titles before I think that the next piece of lyric, or the first piece of lyric, was the title. Hey, it just sang well, Young and Restless, running out of control, and then the rest of the lyric flowed out of that. So you know what, it can come from any direction. Now some people will say, oh, it's always the lyrics, you know what I mean, or I always hear that first. And I remember Jeff Lynne of ELO, who now writes with Jim Valence and Bryan Adams, that his method is the same as we had with Young and Restless, like put together a really strong track, just powerful chords, and just go from strength to strength, have an arrangement, and then worry about the lyrics later. I think that would drive me nuts. I couldn't do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I like being inspired by lyrics. I mean, I love gospel. And some of the great old jazz stuff. I've been listening to big band jazz lately, and just some of the swing sentiments in there. So I'll just let it flow in from whatever direction. And but again, not every time. Like because I just finished writing my own new record. There's a song on there. I wanted to have a certain feel, like not a ballad and not a high energy rock song, but I really wanted to have this sort of Bob Dylan type, real chunky, funky feel. Probably a lot like the Beatles Come Together, And you're a drummer, so boom, doom, ba,
Yep.
doom, doom, ba, boom, boom, ta, boom, doom, ba, ba, boom, doom, ba. That thing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, I've never written one of those. What do you call that? A slow groove in 4/4, and then the bass player you can imagine, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's Jaco Pastorius, boom. So that's all I had. And then I forced myself to put an arrangement around it, and then I got an idea, because it was kind of dark, and it was kind of riveting, So okay, this has to be a really subjective feeling that you get. So it had kind of an evening, a night vibe to it. So I ended up calling it He Don't Live Here. Like, this is not good English, but that's okay. Rhythm and blues is not good English.
Yeah.
So I don't speak like this, but the title is He Don't Live Here No More. My mother would say, he doesn't live here anymore. But
yes.
Sorry, Mom, that doesn't sing very well. But he don't live here no more, So like a bad roommate that you have to get rid of.
Yeah.
So, and then it also had other layers, it had spiritual overtones, that battling with bad habits and sin and all that kind of stuff that we all go through. So yeah, it's a song, and it has a happy ending. There's a salvation ending, So, but it started with a drum beat.
Wow. You're a phenomenal writer.
Well, I'm too dumb to quit, man. But, what do they say? I mean, Bryan Adams told me this. He says, man, I'm following the creative muse, M-U-S-E.
Mm-hmm.
Like, keep following that muse where it leads you, like that's your job, to just follow that. We're in the ideas business.
Have you written stuff for other artists?
I wish I could say yes, but I've never felt it that way, I mean, I have friends who've had careers writing film soundtracks and jingles, commercial jingles and stuff like that. And I admire that, but I could never use that as a starting point for myself. You know what I mean? Like, it has to be more personal. Now, I could be hard on myself and say, well, does that mean that that you're not as professional as a guy who can just, write a commercial jingle or a film soundtrack? No, I don't think so. But I've had other friends who've written in like as staff writers, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like not the Brill Building, that's before my time, but like say, for example, in Nashville, there are still guys who are professional writers and they show up every day, you know, in their little room with a little recording rig. And, you know, from 9 to 5, their job is to write, hopefully, hit songs.
Yeah.
But I can't do it on demand. You know, I have to feel it first. So I guess in that sense, I'm writing for expression, you know, and it doesn't have to be my expression. Like sometimes I'll have another singer in my head, you know, like I used to write for Ron Tabak's voice, you know, like the song I mentioned a moment ago, Flying. And that was it's not for me to say, but it was a pretty sizable top 10 hit in the US. And the whole way through writing it, it was Ron's voice that I was writing for. I never wrote it for me to sing. I wrote it for Ron to sing. So I'm glad I did. He sang it very well.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Amazing. How long did it take you to write your new album?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yeah, I almost kept stumbling on with my last answer because, you know, as an artist, like when you're a singer, songwriter, rock and roll guy, you know, I'm really writing for myself. Now that sounds selfish. I'm not writing for myself, you know, self gratification, but self expression. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because I'm an artist, because I'm, you know, a recording artist, and because I'm a singer and a guitar player and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, truth be told, I do write for my own expression and myself as an artist. So for the new album, thanks. You know, it was an interesting exercise because the way we started in the studio, I was called in just as a session singer. And I thought it was just to sing on somebody else's song. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There was no mention of me doing an album. So it was quite charming. My good friends, Kevin Stewart Swain and his co-producer, the producer engineer, Scott Young, who's also an excellent drummer, multi-instrumentalist. Well, they're both multi-instrumentalists, great bass players, great guitar players, both of them. And Scott's he drummed on most of the record and engineered it as well. But they called me and they said, "Well, can you be at the studio 7 o'clock on Thursday? You know, it's just a session. We want you to come and do some singing." So I thought it's like background vocals. I said, "Oh, great, sure, thank you." You know, I could use the money.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Well, who are the other singers?" You know, I thought there's going to be 3 or 4 of us. "Oh, nobody, just you." "Oh. Okay, you know, maybe you want me to go sha la 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 la, you know, ooh ee in the choruses, and you want to multi-track it. Okay, whatever you want." So I showed up and I said, "Okay, what do you want me to sing?" And there was not a lead vocal on. There was 2 songs, and I said, "Well, okay, do you want me just to put a guide track, like a scratch track, you know, for the rest of us to sing along to?" And they said, "Yeah, okay, go ahead." All right, so I started singing lead. And then they said, "Okay, keep going, man. You know, keep going." So as it went along, we took a break. We took a coffee break. And I said, "Whose project is this? What am I doing? You know, who is it? How, you know, I'm asking to be produced. Like, okay, direct me, you know."
Mm-hmm.
"I'm ready for my close-ups, Mr. DeMille." You know,
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. And then at that point, then they let the cat out of the bag and they said, "Well, Al, we're hoping this is going to be the beginning of your new solo album." And I said,
Ah.
"You guys," and so then they said, "I hope you have 10 more songs." And it was so sweet. So Kevin Stewart Swain and Scott Young just really wanted to see good old Al, you know,
Yeah.
come into his own with a new solo record. So anyway, that really broke the ice. So of course, then I started trying real hard. I said, "Okay, well, let's get these songs done." And they even let me have a hand in writing the lyrics. I said, "Okay, if you really want me to feel these songs, is it okay if I mess around with the lyrics?" And they said, "Yeah, go, man. this is now your baby,
Mm-hmm.
And then we did a couple of co-writes. So in other words, we started writing, as the project was born. So, Scott and I have a song on there, and it was mainly, Scott already had the real skeleton and the bones. It was already there, it existed as a demo. And same with Kevin. Kevin had a couple of killer songs. So we did that. And they also wanted to resurrect a couple of my songs that, excuse me, that they were aware of that had never quite seen the light of day. They were aware of a few little catalog pieces of mine, that Prism had recorded and maybe ended up on a B-side somewhere, or we never quite got around to. So there's a song that I wrote with Brian Adams and Jim Vallance called Way of the World. And that was like a bonus track on a greatest hits, one of those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And Kevin and Jim Vallance too. He said, that song deserves more, And so Kevin and Scott resurrected that. So we want you to do a brand new version of that. So, okay, absolutely. So it wasn't a brand new writing exercise, but it was a fresh recording of that. And there's also another, strangely enough, ballad called Lonely Town. And that had been kept alive. I think Prism recorded it twice, but again, never quite. And there's all kinds of reasons why songs don't get onto albums. It's not that they're not good enough, but someone might say, well, you know what? We only have room for 9 songs, and we've already got 2 ballads. There's any number of reasons, and everybody's done it. Elton John's done it. The Beatles and the Stones have done it. They'll say, hey, wait a minute, that was a great song. Let's bring it back. So there was a couple of those, but I will say, for the rest of it, it was pretty much freshly written, and we did it in 2 sections. We had about 2/3 of the record done. So there's 10 tracks on Al Harlow now, and I was still writing brand new songs right up to the end. We went in right near the end of the process when the vocals were done. Some stuff was already mixed, and we had some guest mixers. We brought in some really cool guest stars too. Sean Varol, the lead guitar player with Wide Mouth Mason, we brought him in for a track or two, and as I mentioned, James Bowers and DL Carr. We did some BG vocals and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I had 3 songs that I wrote right near the end of the process, like He Don't Live Here No More, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
and one called Meet Me in the Sky, which is a song about Prism, but it's my viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And Dance with the One You Came With. Those 3 songs were written fresh right at the end because the album had already taken on a life of its own. It had taken on a shape, So I thought, okay, I see where we're going here. And I don't know, is the idea of a cohesive album, is that idea dead? I mean, you tell me. We're living in an era of people cherry picking songs and making up their own playlists, which is great. I love it. I do it myself. We all do it, right? But now playlisting has become a new art form. Like take your favorite songs and now we'll trade playlists. You know what I mean? Like playlists themselves are becoming almost like albums. But still, I feel that if you say that you're making an album, then if not a concept album, but it has to be a concept insofar as it holds together. It sounds like it belongs together. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It flows like an album. So we got to the point, we were about 2/3 of the way through the whole thing. And I said, okay, now I have a new vision. I think it needs a song like this, and it needs a song like that. Then we'll have a complete statement, So that I had the luxury of doing that. And we went right back into recording bass and drums, like bed tracks from the ground up.
Yep.
For the last 3 songs. So yeah, Meet Me in the Sky, Dance with the One You Came With, and He Don't Live Here No More came in right at the end. And I think if people sit down and just listen to the whole record from beginning to end, it will speak to the listener in that way. Like, wow, I've just been taken on a journey here. That album took me somewhere.
Do you have backing vocals on the album?
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. There's
that's done by who?
well, there was two ladies on it, DL Carr and Delana Hogg, and Scott and Kevin are both great singers, and so they're in the BG lineup.
Hmm.
I think I snuck in there too. I think we had the barbershop quartet in there a couple of times, you
Yeah.
know. And yeah, I'm backing me up. And that's fun, you know, when you get a nice blend and all that sort of thing. And yeah, but and the girls did a wonderful job too. Yeah.
The album, was it released last year or is it this year?
Where are we now? Yeah, 20. I think
23.
it was. Well, yeah, where are we? Beginning of 2022. Wait, what am I saying? Yeah,
Okay, so it's last year.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So is that new? I think it's still new. It's
It's
new to
still
me.
new. Sure, it's new.
And yeah, and it's you know, in today's world, I mean, I think it was just every young musician's and singer's dream. Every girl and boy in Canada, you know, I don't know what girls dream of, but in Canada, either you want to be a hockey star or a rock and roll star. Is that right?
Right.
Am I?
Yes,
Does that make sense? And,
absolutely.
and of course, you know, everybody wants to put out records and have a big audience and all that. But of course, you know, I'm not 19 years old anymore, so I'm not sure what the expectations are now. You know, so that idea of taking over the world and being the big thing, I don't think young musicians dream of that anymore. But I think everybody wants to have an appreciative, sizable audience, like, you know, a critical mass, shall we call it? And so it's funny that this record, we excuse me, we charted top 10 in a bunch of stations in England and Germany, and there's a station, a WRCT in Pittsburgh. They grabbed it right away, and we had three singles, and they've got sister stations in Nashville and out in California. And when they wrapped up not only their top singles for the year, but also their top albums. Yeah, the album was number one in Pittsburgh, and their satellites in Nashville and California, and one of the singles was number two or something like that. So you know, I'm grateful. I'm flattered.
Wow.
So, but you know, nobody becomes like the next Elvis. You know, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? The next Adele. Well, I guess Adele gets to do it.
Yeah. What's your just sort of going off on a little bit of a tangent here, so don't mind me.
Go ahead. It's fun.
What's your guitar of choice?
Oh, we're going there, are we?
Yes.
Well, isn't that something? Thank you for asking that. Yeah, because my cars and guitars video series is all, you know, in the works right now too. So I love talking guitars, of course, and this is unusual. Most guitar players will say Les Paul or Stratocaster or
Mhm.
maybe Telecaster, maybe, you know. But I'm a Tele guy, and off and on I've got a couple of Les Pauls and a couple of Stratocasters and several Teles. But I have to say, my number one go-to choice of guitar is a strange bird. It's called the Gibson Firebird, and it looks like one of those upside down backwards things, but not one of those really pointy Jacksons, not like that, you know, with
Mhm.
skulls and flames on it. But the Gibson Firebird came out in 1963, and guitar players will know what I'm talking about. It's easy to Google the Gibson Firebird, and it came out and it looked reversed in 1963. And Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones popularized it, and Johnny Winter had his own signature model. So there's been some Firebird guys, but it's really awkward because it does feel upside down, you know?
Mhm.
And it's the size of a bass. It's huge. It'll only fit in a bass guitar case.
Mhm.
So most guitar players don't like it. You know, like, what is this thing? You know, like a Strat or a Tele or a Les Paul. It just fits right there. You know, and so the neck is long. It's awkward, but it's got a sound like nothing else. And if you wrestle it, it's a wrestling match. You know, I have to wrestle this thing to the ground, but I don't know what to say. I love it to bits, and when I pick up a Firebird, I feel as though, okay, I'm home. This is my baby. This was made for me, you know. So I've got several of them now, and plus there's good memories with it. My dad bought me my first one, and bless you, dear old dad. And so yeah, I'm a Gibson Firebird guy. But now, having said that, I just bought a very, very rare guitar. There's only a few hundred of them in the whole wide world. But in 1959, Bo Diddley, and he was known for those square guitars, those square Gretches, the cigar box, you know,
Oh, yeah.
which Gretsch had made for him. And the guy at Gretsch who designed that for him almost got fired for doing that. But in 1959, he designed another one, which he called the Jupiter Thunderbird. And
is that the one in the picture that you sent me?
Yes, that's it.
That's a cool guitar, man.
Isn't that beautiful? It's beautiful. Like there's something to be said for looking. I hate to say this. I don't want to get sensuous, but looking at a beautifully shaped guitar is like looking at a beautifully shaped girl, or a Ferrari, or you know, my son and I collect cars, so there's some lovely shaped cars out here in the collection. You know, so there's a visual aspect to it. But anyway. In 1959, Bo Diddley designed what later became known as the Billy Boat. Now the story was, it was shaped like Bo Diddley was a car guy, so the Jupiter Thunderbird, it was meant to look like a Thunderbird car. And I've got one. I've got a 55 T-Bird here, and I could see it. His guitar looks like my car. Mm-hmm. Anyhow. God rest his soul. Bo's no longer with us, of course, but he had 3 of these things built, and he gave one to Billy F. Gibbons of ZZ Top.
Ah, yeah.
And Billy immediately realized, okay, this is special. He put it into a glass case, locked the case up, and put it into his museum. And then he phoned up Gretsch Custom Shop and said, okay, I've got this Bo Diddley guitar, but I'm not taking this thing on the road. You know what I mean? Like WestJet are not going to lose this. Mm-hmm. And so he got Gretsch to build him a few more. Well, since then, they've built him many more. And so every 4 or 5 years, the Gretsch Custom Shop, if they don't have anything else to do, they'll build maybe 4 or 5. And I found this out, you know, and so I contacted them, and now I've got one. I've got one of the they come out of Texas, and so I've got one of the latter day Billy Bows, and there's not many of them in existence, but it has its own sound, its own mojo. And again, I've had friends play it and say, "Oh, this is awkward. I don't like this thing." Yeah, but you gotta understand its personality. It's like getting along with somebody, you know. Mm-hmm. There's a personality in there, and so between the Firebird and the Billy Bow, I'm hooked.
It's a sweet guitar.
It really is.
It is. Just to look at. I mean, the gold hardware.
Yeah.
Is it actual gold hardware?
That's a good question. It says gold. It must be.
Oh,
and it costs a lot of money.
There you go.
I presume it is. Yeah, for what they're charging for it. Yes, it must be. Well, it says gold plated. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, some guitars are brass plated.
Yeah.
But this actually says gold. Yeah.
I was debating because I wanted to put a picture of you in my Facebook post, but I couldn't figure out how to do it without automatically generating a link to my YouTube profile picture. So I had to scrap the idea of using the picture, but I wanted to use the one with the Gretsch. And I would just looking at the picture, looking at it, pinching and zooming in. But I can't make out what it says underneath the word Gretsch. Oh,
I think it's just a design. Yeah, I don't think
it's a word.
Pickups. Oh, yeah. On the pickups, it says they're Don Jones Powertron pickups.
No, not on the pickup.
Okay.
On the where the whammy bar is.
The Bigsby. It's got a Bigsby tailpiece on it.
Okay, so underneath, right underneath where it says Gretsch, there's a word there
That's right.
in small print, but I don't know what it says.
Don't go away. I'll be right back. I've got it right here.
Sure. This should be cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the video debut of the Gretsch Billy Bow.
There we go.
Isn't that the most beautiful shape you've ever seen?
That's beautiful.
So yes, two Powertron pickups, and that's just a master volume control there. And then there's that volume is for this pickup. There's your back pickup, and that's just a master tone control, and that is the volume for the whole thing. And yeah, it's really old fashioned, but that's an old Bigsby, whammy bar tailpiece, which a lot of the Gretsches have, of course. And let's see what it says. Can you see it from there? I think it just says Gretsch and Bigsby.
Right underneath where it says Gretsch. I can't make it out from here.
Oh boy, I need my glasses. Yeah, Gretsch, and then I think it says B1, whatever that means. And then I'm pointing at the word Bigsby.
Bixby?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's an old design. And then up there, I guess it just says
Gretsch
in a copper sparkle.
Yep.
So yeah, so this was designed by Bo Diddley in 1959. And now Billy F. Gibbons has an identical one to this and a few others.
So what are they worth, Al?
Oh, I've seen them going. I don't know what you can get for this thing. If they stop building them and they only build you can buy one brand new for, I think it's 5,000 US or something, but it's a dark red with the black. It doesn't have, it's not gold. It's kind of a chrome, and it doesn't have the Bigsby on it. So yeah, I don't know. But I'm sure glad I got this one.
Wow.
And it's got a nice crunchy sound. So it's not completely solid. It's chambered, like there's chambers in the back, and it's got the cushion edging on it and stuff like that. So it's got a sound, because most Gretsches are arch tops, semi-hollow.
Mm-hmm.
And this is chambered. So it's not quite solid, not quite hollow. So it's got a real crunchy grip on it. So probably country players would love it, or maybe jazz players would love it with this pickup. But it rocks. It's a rock and roll guitar.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, definitely. How many guitars do you own?
I lost track. I don't know. 40, something like that.
Wow.
There's a few rare birds here, and yeah, I tend to go for the esoteric stuff, But yeah, quite a few Firebirds, and somewhere there's a Vox Teardrop. Oh, I have that too. Are we making this into a guitar show? One more. Your audience might dig this.
Okay. A Vox Teardrop coming up.
Now, I was always a Brian Jones fan, the original lineup of the Rolling Stones.
Yep.
True confessions here. I was a young lad. I was young once, and Brian Jones was my hero. Brian Jones was the first slide guitar player to come out of England ever. No Englishman had ever played slide before Brian Jones.
Yeah.
And of course, he was a harmonica player above and beyond all else too. So we miss Brian, because Brian died far too young. But the Vox company built him one of these in white.
Wow.
And it's the Mark III, it's called. And they stopped building them soon after. There was only a couple in existence. And then they kind of farmed out the manufacturing to Italy. And then the guitars got pretty sloppy. They had 3-4 pickups and too many controls and stuff. But this is the original Vox Mark III. So thank you, Brian Jones. And it sounds a lot like you can see with the single coil pickups. It's very much like a Stratocaster kind of sound,
Mm-hmm.
and yet kind of telly too. It's actually I think the nice switch is actually borrowed from a Telecaster. I think Vox just ordered up a couple of hundred nice switches and turned out this very, very simple guitar. One volume, one tone, and yeah. Thanks for asking.
Definitely.
Yes, the guitar is your best friend.
It is. And probably your 55 Chevy.
That's a pretty good friend too.
Is that what you were driving when I was talking to you last night?
Oh, that's right. We spoke on the phone when I was driving. Well, I was driving.
No, you were driving a Thunderbird.
I was driving my 55 Thunderbird last night. You and I spoke.
Yes.
As I was illegally making a cell phone call.
Yes. 55 T-Bird, that's got to be cool.
Well, yeah. You know what they say, that boys and their toys, right? So,
right.
It's a guy thing, If you're into cars, you'll probably end up buying the cars that you admired when you were a kid,
Yeah.
It's like a boyhood dream. Well, these guitars are a perfect example.
Absolutely.
Reliving your childhood, prolonged immaturity.
Well, Al, we're just about out of time. So I just want to say it's been an honor talking to you.
It's been a delightful talking to you too, Jeff, and thanks for having me on the show.
And I hope we can do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
So if you'll just sit tight while I sign off. Okay?
You bet. And
Okay.
Thanks, everybody, for having a look and a listen.
Yes.
We'll see you out there.
Okay, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again next week. Al, just sit tight. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share. See ya.